always world news that we bring to you each and every week here on Anchor by Spotify. This is Seth Morgan, and we are back. Hope you had a great afternoon and that you had something nutritional to eat and you're feeling great and you're keeping your vibrational energy high. Okay, we're going to, again, be bringing you some more information where we left off this afternoon. Excuse me. Okay. Pause for a moment, get something to drink here. 1 sec. Nothing artificial here. We want to keep it, like we say, keep it real, right? Okay, there's been some debates as to the prowess of melanated people versus everybody else, and of course, there are, those who have said that having melanin or the active pineal gland versus the calcified pineal gland really doesn't make one attuned to receiving from the higher source, the connectivity with the creator in the universe. And of course, this has been not just debated, but it's also been proven scientifically. And while indigenous persons who are melanated can have a calcified pineal gland, that has everything to do with how they're vibrating, how they're living. So if you're eating, for example, if you're eating all the wrong foods, your pineal gland can be calcified, meaning that it's dormant. You're not connected as you should be. And so this is why I said earlier and before that you have everything within you to secrete that power from the creator in the universe. So it is totally up to you for it to be active. It's totally up to you. Another way it can be calcified, of course, if you are using substances, that they put in this world, such as, alcohol all the time, marijuana, even prescription drugs, all these things can calcify your pineal gland. And this is why, this is why you have a lot of people who, unfortunately, who live in this world, who are going around and they're impulsive to the point where they do things without even really thinking. And so when you hear news of this person having caused the demise of somebody else through maybe using a weapon or whatever it is, it's because of that pineal gland being calcified. Because who would attune a person that's attuned to the Creator and vibrationally high and on a high frequency, they wouldn't be creating those type of situations. They wouldn't. They just wouldn't. Okay, so we're going to give you some of this, and we're going to continue, and we want to hear what these people have to say, because, and we'll skip to, excuse me again, we'll skip to, of course, the important areas, but these studies have been done by black scientists and geneticists and so forth, as well as Caucasian, and of course, people are going to have a different approach. A lot of times, and let me say this as well, a lot of times people even have a different approach, even with the science there. And so, they'll have a different approach, even with the science right in their face. I mean, it was even said, and some of you may be aware of this, that even when the proof, I was looking at this show, and even when the proof had came out about the Kemites, because they've been trying to take Egypt out of Africa for the longest. So we know that Egyptology was a set up institution to basically dismantle the whole cultural identity of the Kemites. There were scholars that years ago even wrote books when Sheikh Anta Diop and Obinga and all these people went to the summit in Europe, and they crushed them. They proven that the Kemites were Africans. And racism is such a disease. It's such a disease that these scholars said that even if they were brown, listen to this nonsense. They said even if they were brown or black, they were black Europeans, or they were black, brown, Caucasians. They came up with all kinds of theories, and it's so ridiculous that it's unreal. And there's been a concerted effort for millennia, for many of years, to extract or to strip away from the godness of who we are, because we're the closest thing to divinity. And I'm going to show you this in this. Okay, so this has really been the argument from its inception, from millennia ago, and this is why the powers that be over time had to thwart, and they had to change the whole paradigm of the way the world's seeing divinity and the way the world's seeing the peopling of the world, in terms of, classification, and all this kind of stuff. Okay. And so people will say that it doesn't matter. So if it didn't matter, why would you make yourself the top tier? You would tear down every other culture who's been here for millennia, but then you'll make yourself the top tier and say we're better than everybody else, which everyone else knows that's a big fat lie. So the inferiority lies in your your how can I put this? It lies in the fact of as what you do. It lies in the fact that you have to make yourself, you have to tell everybody that you're better. Anybody that's better don't have to go around doing that. They automatically know. So, okay, so let's read. It talks about this study that was done, and if it talks about if you've been a part of the study, then there's this belief that whites, because of calcified pineal glands, are inferior to various ways, and the argument goes on to state that that it's grounded in certain urban myths about melanin, which addresses, of course, the studies and so forth. And it says, I will then end the redirecting your attention to what I believe to be a real connection between the pineal gland and spirit. Okay, now they said this is myth one. Whites are inferior because they have calcified pineal glands and blacks don't. Okay? Okay, so there's this monthly journal called Radiology. It's owned and published by the Radiological Society of America. Okay, now March 1982, they issued a paper entitled Age-Related Incidents of Pineal Calcification Detected by Computed Tomography. It was co-authored by Robert A. Zimmerman, MD, and Larissa T. Bielanuk, MD. Here at Desti, you will hear frequently the urban myth that whites have calcified pineal glands and blacks do not. But the science is that calcification of the pineal gland is not as distinctly demarcated, okay, whatever that is, as that. To begin with, and I make this point often, race is more of a cultural designation than a biological one. Just for example of this non-scientific classification is the inconsistency of considering President Obama as black and George Zimmerman as white when they both have one and only one white parent. Okay? But it gets even more confused once we add into the conversation the topic of pineal calcification. As the aforementioned radiology papers details with documented facts instead of racist hysteria, blacks have incidences of pineal calcification as well. About 10% of blacks do. So do a quick review. Remember the blacks here who have insisted emphatically that whites, are the ones with calcified pineals. Well, as it turns out, 1 out of every 10 of those blacks statistically have calcified pineals as well. And I told you the reasons for that, because in all actuality, they don't have to have calcified pineal glands. Of course, when you factor in urban areas where in all of these factors play a great role in calcification, which is by design. And that is, if you live in an area where, and you don't have to do it, but everybody has a threshold, right? Okay, and you have, liquor stores on every corner, bad food shops in the neighborhoods, a high rate of unemployment. So you have all this consternation in these communities, there are going to be people who are going to succumb to a lot of those things. It may not statistically be a high percentage, but there's going to be a percentage of those individuals who are going to succumb to that environment. And in turn, what happens as a result, as you know, is that there's going to be detrimental situations that are the results of that, thereby having a calcified pineal gland. Because if you're drinking, you're smoking weed all the time, you don't work, you don't have a job because of unemployment or just bad diet, all of these things play a major role in your pineal gland being calcified. As opposed to if you are not dealing with those things, then you understand what I'm saying? Because you already have all the tools. Okay. So it says there, but it gets, as I just read, even more confused once we add into the conversation the topic of pineal calcification. Okay, and it talks about 1 out of 10 of black folks have this issue. Okay, so since racial classifications are so muddied by subjective cultural bias, which is true, it is more relevant to consider Americans versus other cultures. That reveals an enlightening stat: 40% of Americans have calcified pineal glands, which perhaps explains why America's melting pot is what Dr. King infamously described as the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. So, for those of you who did not hear the last podcast and pineal gland, and you're wondering what I'm talking about, it's talking about our connectivity to the Creator and the universe, which is called that. It's called that black dot that's in the back of your, like a pine cone. They said it's in the front of your brain, but when we look at it instinctively, it'll show you where it lies. And so with the Kemites, the third eye of Horus, it shows the pineal gland in the center. And then, of course, you have the pituitary gland, you have the thymus gland. Now, this thymus gland is reticent to women mostly, because this is an area for women, the thymus gland, that where a lot of her emotions are secreted. A lot of her emotions come out of the woman's thymus gland, okay? And emotions, and sexuality and all these things. Okay, so let's read on. It says, urban myth number 2, pineal calcification is directly related to godliness. So you have those who are trying to dispute a lot of these claims. This urban myth is rooted in the as yet unproven premise that the amount of melanin in a human body directly affects how godly that human is. Now, the biggest problem with this urban myth is that melanin is neither synthesized or secreted by the pineal gland. What the pineal gland does, both synthesize and secrete, is a similar sounding hormone, melatonin. And we're going to get in more of that. And it also creeps something like DMT and so again, the reason for this statement is because obviously you can probably figure out. It's easy to figure out. And so why people are thinking they're better, other folks are thinking they're better. We never said we were better than anybody, right? When people start saying I'm better than you because of my skin color. I never said I was better because I'm a black man or you're a black woman. So let me say this. You should think you're better. Everybody else is doing it. And I'm not saying to do it from a premise where you demean people, but you know that you've been given something special. You've been given something special and the whole world knows it. So why wouldn't you think that? You know, you shouldn't be arrogant. No, you shouldn't be that. You should walk in humility and, keep your vibrational frequencies high and constantly gravitate towards, you already know what it is to the universe so that you're able to do those things that your essence causes you to be able to do. So there's no confusion. At least there shouldn't be none on our part. Okay? So it goes on to say that with this confusion, the melanin and melatonin, the answer is not difficult to figure out. Okay? One of the distinction cultures makes that blacks and whites is skin color. And that's one of the distinctions that they make between blacks and whites. It's skin color. Okay, so skin color is determined by melanin. Primarily, but not exclusively, eumelanin. Hence, if you are a black racist, so here we go. You can't be a black racist. There's no such thing as a black racist. Okay? Black people can't be racist because they did not set up the institutions. They don't have the power to withhold or to block or to impede or to degrade anybody from housing, jobs, employment, schooling. That's where racism comes from, where you deprive people of a natural born human right of the things that are God-given. So black people, again, can never be racist. They can be prejudiced, but they can't be racist because there's a vast difference between prejudice and racist. I could be prejudiced against you because I don't like what you're doing. I don't like the way you do things. But racism is a whole nother level. Okay? And I think we all know that. And if you don't, then of course you do now, because racism was not created, it's not a created construct from black people. Okay, so it goes on to say, that blacks, if you are a black racist and you wish to prove that whites are inferior to blacks, you can do this if you can prove that inferiority/superiority is determined by melanin. So let's prove it. And again, blacks are not racist and they can't be racist. I think you know that. As well, you fudge a bit by pretending melanin and melatonin are the same thing, banking on most copper tops being too lazy to educate themselves as to what is fact and what is fiction. So here's the argument. And as you are hearing, it talks about what was just read about melanin and melatonin are the same thing, banking on most copper tops being too lazy to educate themselves as to what is fact and what is fiction. Now listen to the language there. So the unproven theory, pineal gland and the Ajna chakra. Let us move on from groundless urban myths to what I propose may indeed have some validity. We will start with a scientifically proven fact. Okay, so here are the facts. Synthesis and secretion of melatonin by the pineal gland is dramatically affected by light exposure to the eyes. This sensitivity to light is indirectly proportional at night when light incidence to the eyes is less, more melatonin is synthesized and secreted. Now, we inject not a fact but conjecture. I am probably not the first to suggest to you that there may be some sort of connection between the spiritual sixth chakra, aka the adjunta, or something like that, chakra, and the physical pineal gland, aka third eye, which we talked about earlier. And we talked about how children have such active melatonin, and their pineal gland is active when they're very young. And the studies have shown scientifically that black children are smarter and their motor skills, that's what I'm trying to say. Their motor skills from a baby are more pronounced, and they are able to do things that other children are not able to do when they're born. For instance, I'll give you an example. This has scientifically been proven and studied. When black babies are born, black babies are able to hold their heads up by themselves by 6 months, something between 6 and 8 months. Whereas you have other children, Caucasian babies, they're not holding their heads up by themselves until they're almost a year old. Okay, this is proven. Black babies are talking, earlier. They're walking quicker. They're potty trained faster. You understand? They learn this stuff really quick. Okay? They're able to use utensils and things like that quicker. This has been proven. That's not racist, it's just proven facts. Okay? So connecting the dots between scientific fact and conjecture, aka intuition, we consider a possible connection between the third eye and the adjunct chakra and the light. Okay? So several years ago, I was working in corporate America at a job I found most disturbing to inner peace quite by accident. If you believe in accidents, I discovered a way to restore inner peace. That way involved sitting in a quiet, dark room, back straight, focusing my eyes upon a spot directly ahead and exactly between my physical eyes, but doing this with my eyes lids closed. All the time, folding my hands in my lap with fingers shaped into a pyramid. And at the time, I knew little about chakras or pyramid power or the third eye or the light. I just knew that I flowed naturally into this exercise. And so this has everything to do with what I was saying earlier, this morning or this afternoon, when I said, let's take a moment, let's breathe, exhale, inhale, close your eyes, and you begin to see the light of your pineal gland when you focus on that spot. You focus on that between your brows and the third eye. You'll begin to see the light of your pineal and the chakra, which is called the head chakra. Okay, so years passed, I came to understand that what I was doing was what others call meditation, whatever. Okay, and I came to understand that what I was staring at with my physical eyes was the approximate location of the pineal gland. You understand? So when you shut your eyes and you focus between your brow and your nose, where that light center is, you'll begin to be able to see that light. Okay? you'll focus and you'll put your, your meditation on that. Okay, so I came to understand, okay, the physical eyes were the approximate location of the pineal gland, which some now believe to be the material realm visualization of the immaterial realm of the chakra, that Ajahn chakra, okay? Now, but why did I close my eyes? And why do so many people close their eyes when they pray and or when they meditate? I flow toward the explanation which sits between scientific fact, material realm, and esoteric intuition, immaterial realm. And so that's what it's about. You're not focusing on anything material per se, but you're between the material realm and the exoteric intuition realm of immaterial realm, where you're allowing yourself to be detached. Okay. The physical light, which science talks about, is not exactly the same thing as the light which sages spend by climbing the Jacob's ladder of the chakra. And it talks about this in Genesis, in the Bible, Genesis 28:10-19, where Jacob left Bathsheba and he went toward Hiram. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. The sun had set. The physical sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in the place to sleep. And he dreamed, and you guys know the story. And he seen the angels descending and ascending and descending on this ladder. And he realized through that meditation or through his sleep state that his pineal, his third eye, was open. And this is where Jacob said he went on to exclaim that he had seen, this. Let me just read this. And then, of course, the Creator began to tell Jacob, as you know in the story, that I'm going to bless your seed, and they're going to be all over the globe, and, I'll be with you. And then Jacob awoke out of his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, or Yah, and the gate of heaven. And Jacob called that place Pineal. Okay? Now think about that. He called the place Pineal, meaning I went to heaven. My third eye was opened. Okay? So when you go back to your scriptures and you read that, you'll see that. Here again we see in the story of Jacob climbing the ladder to heaven, him waiting until the sun sets to climb the ladder to heaven accomplishes the same thing as I and others closing our eyes to pray in order to meditate. Why this need to limit light from the physical material realm to see the light of the spiritual and material realm? Could it be to activate the aforementioned synthesis and secretion of melatonin by the third eye? Okay. So, and it goes to say, again, because we go back to the myth, the urban myth, whites are inferior because they have a calcified pineal gland and blacks don't. Okay, so the study shows, including the information that you have provided, that black people have a higher percentage of activatable pineal glands in comparison to any other. Hope I skipped too fast there. Okay. To any other race on earth. 85%, although you have stated 90% with the brown / Latino red population of earth at about 55%, 55% Asian at 35%, and whites at 15%, although you have stated 10%. So what is the argument? Therefore, it is my assertion that since all non-African DNA is part Neanderthal, and I've talked about this before in another podcast, the African is the only human on the planet. Everyone else has Neanderthal DNA. The studies have been done scientifically. This is what is so disturbing to a lot of people who are non-African, that you have Neanderthal DNA. And so therefore, you have to assert this narrative and notion of superiority to other melanated people on the planet, which is scientifically wrong. Okay, then this Neanderthal or caveman DNA has a direct relationship with the ratio of calcified pineal glands and the ratio of melanin and melatonin within man and the qualities of the aforementioned. Okay, according to my personal, I could be wrong, research, melatonin is directly related to the so-called sleep states / higher sensory states of consciousness of human beings. And according to my research, the dream world is actually the real world or the spiritual realm, the reality. And so this is why I always say that everything happens in the subconscious, because that's where reality really is. What we see every day in conscious parallels and so forth, many have said is illusionary, because your perception of things is just that. You understand what I'm saying? Your perception, which we were talking about earlier, your perception is just what it is, your perception. You perceive by what is being said and what is actually here. So, in other words, you create a lot of stuff yourself and are not even aware of it. With all this energy that's in the universe, that's coming from indigenous melanated people, because of the Kundalini and the light source of activation and magnetism that's within us and has been given to us by the Creator, we create all of this. We were part and parcel in the creative process with the Creator, right? Does that make sense spiritually? Because he said, you are him and he is you. So if in fact, in the process of creation, you are part of all of this. So you're in the part of creating this perception of the way everything is here. I'll move on. Okay, so, so it talks about the humans being, and, according to the research, dream world, and actually the real world or the spiritual realm is really the reality. And that's why when you dream, a lot of you, when you dream, and you tell your dreams, which you probably shouldn't tell them all, because that's really, really what's happening. That is really, with the exception of maybe a warning or something that you need to tell somebody, or but your own personal, in terms of your ascension, those things are precious and sacred. And so a lot of that you probably should keep to yourself. Okay. For obvious reasons. So this direct awareness and reality that is happening because that's where your essence is. So many of the so-called deities of Kemet and all over Africa are said to be manifested / born, originated from the dream world / spirit realm / reality, and are the direct ancestors of the very same African people which contain African DNA, which as a whole by population possess the highest percentage of activatable pineal glands, as we have already mentioned. Okay? So there's no argument. Scientifically, it's been proven and laid out. Okay, so we're going to stop for a moment, and we're going to come back and we're going to continue and finish this up. Oh, well, and if we don't finish, of course, today, this evening, we'll come back again. So stick with us. Stay with us. It's Seth Moore coming to you again on Anchor by Spotify. Remember that we're always using uncopyrighted music. And remember to visit us on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Patreon, YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon. Stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments. Okay, and we're back again. And we're going to continue. And where we left off, so we're talking about the pineal gland. And I like you so high. I really do. I like you up there. I really do. So this is interesting, and this is going to be really, really good. So let's get back to where we were. So it was talking about many of the so-called deities of Kemet all over Africa are actually said to be manifested, born/originated from the dream world /spirit realm /reality, as we read earlier, and are the direct ancestors of the very same African people which contain the African DNA, which as a whole by population possess the highest percentage of activatable pineal glands, as we have already mentioned. So if the pineal gland is directly connected to the secretion of melatonin, which allows the third eye to be activated and see into the reality without the confusion /blur or of the illusion, and if the deities or gods of the ancients are the ancestors of Africans, then I have to conclude that the walking gods, or at least the descendants of this earth, are those who have non-calcified pineal glands. Did y'all get that? Did you get that? I'm going to read that again. And if, and it's really not an if, but for the sake of those who would arguably debate this theory and the science, it says, and if the deities or gods of the ancients are the ancestors of Africans, which they are, then I have to conclude that the walking gods, or at least the descendants of this earth, are those who have non-calcified pineal glands, meaning the black population as a whole is 85% or 90% God or related to those who the ancient call gods. Are you hearing me? Or better yet, a representation of those gods. Because in ancient times, the Africans were worshipped. Okay, they were worshipped. Those are the first gods that any species came in contact with. The representation of those gods here on this material plane we call Earth, or the planet Earth. And everybody else is a diluted representation of those gods as a whole in respects to their population. This is the science. I ain't say it. Here it is. So white people have only 15% or 10% of a direct link to the so-called gods. In conclusion, my opinion is that as a whole, the race closest to divinity has to be diviner than those who are furthest away from divinity. And in my books, this qualifies as a superiority in at least the category of divinity. Is a caveman superior, equal to, or inferior to a god in respects to divinity? I'll leave that one to opinion. Okay? So there you have it. As already stated, melatonin is directly related to the higher states of consciousness. I believe that darkness is the purest form of light. As I had mentioned before, I said earlier that everything comes out of darkness. When the Creator was doing his thing, and he said that darkness was upon the face of the deep, and this was void, and so forth and so on, he came out of darkness and he said, let there be light, right? Okay, so with the absence of pure sunlight, I also believe that this makes pure light, so-called darkness, / energy available to the pineal gland, which secretes the melatonin that activates the higher vibratory qualities within the mind / soul of the individual. This is why they say that the pineal gland is most active in between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. while you're sleeping. This is what's going on in your pineal gland as you sleep. This is what's happening. You are reactivating and you're being charged up. Yes, you're being charged up. I'm trying to find my remote here. Yeah, you're being charged up for the next go-round, if you want to call it that. So you're getting, it's like you're plugging in your electric battery to your car, and you are getting that juice that you need, so to speak. Okay. Again, this is like they said, this is why they say the pineal gland is most active between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And Muslims believe that Allah is in the lowest heavens and therefore closest to us for prayer within the same time frame. Go figure. The absence of outer light, sunlight, and artificial light thus makes easier and more readily available the access / awareness of the inner light stemming from the soul. Therefore, it is my personal observation that the third eye acts as an agent which allows us to see through the spiritual lenses the reality found in the spiritual realm, the dream world / the reality which is directly accessible / influenced through the melatonin secreted by the third eye. So that's why that time frame between 2 and 6, when you're asleep, if in fact you are asleep, you have a lot of activity going on. Therefore, acting the chakra is simply assessing the ability to see into the reality or the light. And truly, in order to truly ascend, we must let go of all base desires. What was I saying earlier, y'all? And truly to ascend, do you really want to ascend? Or do you want to stay in this lower vibrational frequency? I mean, because the real party is happening up. Like I said, I like you up there. You know, raise your frequency, raise your vibration. That's what's happening. That's where the real action is at. Okay, so it says you must let go. To ascend, you have to let go of these base desires, emotions. Hate being a big one, and racism being fueled by hate is an enemy / obstacle / hindrance to ascension and ascending Jacob's ladder. I see that you seem to have no attachment to racism, and I salute you for that accomplishment. But I ask, what are your views on disdaining white supremacy and the evils that it breeds? Will this disdainment of evil be considered a base emotion? Obviously, you know it is. So why would you have all these people arguing that the spiritual prowess of black people, and that black people having an active pineal gland and being more active than anyone else's, and having the actual spiritual essence to facilitate that. Why the argument? There's no argument. The argument is only because you don't have it. You desire it. And then you act out of your inferiority with evil, with all this other stuff. And that's not all of you, but it's just too many of you. It's just too many of you. You know, and this is why the world is the way it is. And it has to be eradicated. It has to be eradicated, and it will be. It will be. Trust me. It will be. So he asks, would this disdainment actually of evil be considered a base emotion? What is your opinion? I would say yes, it is. You are on target with that. There is a scientifically proven relationship with circadian rhythms, which affect how you dream, and melatonin. If you are given extremely high doses, 50 milligrams per se, it says of the melatonin supplements, you will experience similar dreams / visions to those of someone of psychoactive drugs such as LSD. And so this is why you have to understand, when you see these movies like Avatar, and these people had to use these artificial means to transverse themselves in a higher consciousness. If you remember that in Avatar, remember when the people had to use, when they got into these apparatuses, so somewhat ships, and they lay down and they had to inject them, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, with this serum or whatever it was, so that they can go into a dream state of higher consciousness, because in fact you did not have the pineal activation to get there spiritually. So you had to use artificial means. Okay, so this is why people are using artificial means to do certain things now. And a lot of things are being created artificially because they don't have the spiritual prowess or the connectivity to get there. And so this is why it talks about these injections of melatonin, and they're acting as if you are taking these psychotropic drugs, like LSD to hallucinate which is very dangerous. Okay, so everyone possesses that ability. And European albino who knows self can enter and leave higher states of spiritual awareness more easily than Herman Cain or Flavor Flav. Okay. That is really funny. Said,
Really connect with the beauty of your surroundings.
said the Herman Cain. They said Herman Cain on Flavor Flav. Yeah, so that is funny. So, anyways, so it says here a European albino because you know that in Africa they have albinos who are really black, but they look white because the Eve gene is the only gene from the black woman that can produce all people of color around the globe. That's called the Eve gene, okay? DNA genetics is, at best, just one of many factors which can influence human behavior, okay? All of that can be overruled by knowledge of self. The immaterial can always overrule the material. And so this is why I say, reach higher. Okay, so remember what I read earlier, where it said, many of the so-called deities of Kemet and all over Africa are said to be manifested, born, or originated from the dream world. Think about that. Spirit realm and reality, and are the direct ancestors of the very same African people who contain African DNA, which as a whole possess the highest percentage of activatable pineal glands, as we have already mentioned. I think the sanity and maturity of ancient Kemet culture have more to do with having thousands of years to figure out what is truth and less to do with their DNA mix. Just envision what a light on a hill America would be if America was mature enough. You have to remember the American empire is just an infant. Think about that, which is true. It's just an infant compared to how long other empires remained at the top of the food chain. And sane enough to focus upon seeking the light instead of amassing the mightiest military. And note, blacks and browns are well represented in America's all-voluntary military. Okay, we fight in all their wars, we die, we do all this, and look how we're treated. America cannot get over the disease of racism. They will never. That's why the battle will never be fought with guns and tanks until the alarm is sounded by the galactic ancestors to come rid this world of the wickedness and the evil that is poisoned the planet from its inception. That's poisoned the planet from its inception, with the exception of when the black man ruled, and when he went to war, he had reason to go to war. It wasn't a war of, I'm just going to take you over because I want to exploit you and I just want to do heinous things to you. Because America has gone on other people's territory unwarranted. And most ancient wars, with the exception of the Europeans, were fought over people infringing upon their territory. But then, of course, you've had those other factions that would just go and say, I want what you have, and I'm just going to kill, and I'm just going to do what I have to do to take what you have. Okay, so, again, I have heard some blame the eventual demise of Kemet on its failure to develop a more powerful military defense against the destroyers from the north. I see it differently. A culture which could build the Great Sphinx, and it's really not called the Sphinx. That's the Greek word. I think is I don't remember the exact word. I think it's a Kepintu or something like that. I'm not really sure though. Okay, and build into its architecture the cosmic laws of the universe already had all the power they needed to repel all invaders. As with all great empires, what ultimately defeated Kemet was unchecked growth of internal cancers. Okay, that's it. That's with any great empire. Internal cancers. When you are on target spiritually, nothing in the material realm can intimidate you. You hear that? When you are on target spiritually, nothing in the material world can intimidate you. That is so true. What can? When you're standing as a God and you have all the power. A black fool, regardless of whether or not his pineal gland is calcified, is still a black fool, right? And they have a picture of Clarence Thomas. So you think about that. A black fool, regardless of whether or not his pineal gland is calcified, is still a black fool. Obviously, he got a picture of Flavor Flav and a few other people, but it's just ridiculous, you know? LOL, brethren, point taken on the black fool statement, but we did both state that we were never once speaking about all black folks. And maybe based upon the discussion in the visualization thread, speaking about words and their vibrations having the ability to manipulate and edit DNA, I would guess that the DNA of non-Africans technically could be manipulated and edited to allow ascension to take place. So I would concede to your point of view that whites can achieve these higher states of being. But once again, we did conclude that at least 10% of them have pineal glands waiting to be activated. So technically, not all non-Africans would be excluded. And therefore, those that do have non-calcified pineal glands in hope are the ones more likely to achieve the higher states of consciousness of which we speak, while those with calcified pineal glands technically could achieve these higher states of consciousness, but more than likely won't. You hear that? More than likely they won't. Might I add that if an individual was blue-black with a golf ball-sized pineal gland but lacked the necessary discipline of self, they too would be trapped in their lowly state. See, this is what I'm saying, and I have said, that you have all the spiritual tools, but if you are not doing what's required, like I said in the last podcast, when you listen to it, and the title, part of the title, which says, it does require that you have to do what you need to do to that effect to make it happen. So there's a requirement on your part. And that is coming from that low base vibrational state to reach your higher state. Because without that, your pineal gland will be calcified and it will lie dormant. And all the while you're sleeping between 2 and 6, you got all this activity going on that you are never using. What a waste. Come on. That's your God-given ability to deal and to communicate with everything celestial, with the Creator and the angels, the ancestors, and so forth and so on. In conclusion, I would have to say that it all boils down to the individual's personal discipline and, above all, willpower to achieve ascension. With the fact of having a non-calcified pineal gland as an advantage to those who possess such. Lastly, on the Comedians, weren't they and the Mayans the only two civilizations on Earth to mysteriously disappear off the globe? Maybe there is more to what really went on with them than we truly think we know. Peace. So that's going to be it for now, good people. So remember to support, give us a shout out, like, subscribe, and remember to visit us, as mentioned, always on Patreon, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Podbean, YouTube, which is Patreon, and many, many other host sites. This is Seth Morgan, and hoping that you stay high. And we'll see you the next time. Enjoy your evening. Have a great, great, great sleep. Until next time, peace.